The smell of rain on cold stone reached him first, then the sight of her curled beneath his window like something the storm had washed up and forgotten. Kazimir Iliev stopped on the pavement and studied the young woman asleep on the iron bench pressed against the facade of his townhouse. 3 in the morning, the London street empty except for the hiss of a late taxi passing 2 blocks over. She wore jeans and a thin jacket inadequate for November, her dark hair plastered to her cheek, and beside her sat a canvas duffel bag that looked like it held everything she owned because it probably did. Her knees were drawn up, arms wrapped tight around herself, and even in sleep her face held the exhaustion of someone who had run out of places to run. He could have woken her. Should have, perhaps, sent her to a shelter or called someone. Instead, Kazimir slipped off his overcoat, the black wool still warm from his body, and draped it carefully over her sleeping form. She stirred slightly, burrowing into the unexpected warmth, but did not wake. He stepped back into the shadow of the doorway and stood watch. 4 centuries of existence had taught him to recognize desperation. It wore many faces, spoke many languages, but the shape of it remained constant. This girl had chosen his window for a reason he did not yet understand, but he knew the look of someone with nowhere else to go. He had worn it himself once, lifetimes ago, before he learned what he was and what he could become. The sky began its slow shift toward gray. Kazimir felt the approaching dawn like pressure behind his eyes, the ancient warning written into his blood. He would need to go inside soon. The girl slept on, her breathing steady beneath his coat, and he found himself reluctant to leave her there. But the sun cared nothing for his reluctance, and his kind did not negotiate with daylight. He let himself into the townhouse as quietly as he could, though the heavy door still gave its characteristic groan. Through the window, he watched her a moment longer, then retreated to the windowless room in the basement where he spent his days. Sleep took him quickly, as it always did, the dreamless dark of his kind closing over him like water. He woke at sunset to find his coat folded neatly on the front step, the bench empty. A note had been tucked into the pocket, written on the back of a coffee shop receipt in careful letters. "Thank you. I'm sorry for trespassing. The coat is beautiful. I didn't want anything to happen to it." Kazimir stood on his front step, holding the note, reading it 3 times. She had not signed it. He looked up and down the street, knowing it was foolish, that she could be anywhere in a city of 8 million. The evening traffic rumbled past, indifferent. He folded the note carefully and went back inside. 3 nights later he found her in the same spot. This time he did not hesitate. He unlocked the door, propped it open, and crouched beside the bench. "You're going to freeze out here," he said quietly. She woke with a sharp inhale, eyes flying open. Brown eyes, he noted, the color of strong tea. For a moment she simply stared at him, disoriented, then seemed to remember where she was. She sat up quickly, grabbing for her bag. "I'm sorry, I'll go. I just needed somewhere to rest for an hour. I have a shift at 6 and—" "It's 11 o'clock at night," Kazimir said. "Your shift is 7 hours away. Come inside." "I can't." "You can." He stood, stepped back, giving her space. "There's a guest room on the 2nd floor. It has a lock on the door. You can use it from the inside. There is food in the kitchen. The bathroom has hot water." He paused. "I am not going to hurt you, but I'm also not going to leave you to sleep on cold iron in November." She looked at him, then at the open door, spilling warm light onto the street. He could see her weighing options she did not have. "Why?" she asked finally. "Because I can," Kazimir said simply, "and because you chose to sleep beneath my window twice, which suggests you have run out of better choices. So, inside, or I will stand here being stubborn in the cold, and I have all night." The corner of her mouth twitched despite everything. "You don't look like the charitable type." "I'm not. I'm the practical type. You look like you have not eaten properly in days, and if you collapse on my doorstep, I will have to deal with ambulances and questions." He kept his voice light, matter of fact. "Also, you returned my coat folded. That suggests a person worth helping." She studied him a moment longer, then slowly stood. She was shorter than he had realized, the top of her head barely reaching his shoulder. She picked up her bag, hesitated, then walked through his door. Kazimir let out a breath he had not realized he was holding and followed her inside. The townhouse was narrow and tall, Victorian bones wrapped around modern comfort. He watched her take it in the dark wood floors, the built-in bookshelves stuffed with volumes in a dozen languages, the art on the walls that would have funded a comfortable retirement if she had known what she was looking at. Her expression was carefully neutral, giving nothing away. "Upstairs," he said, leading her to the second floor. The guest room was small but clean, with a double bed and a window overlooking the garden. He showed her the bathroom across the hall, pointed out the fresh towels. "The kitchen is downstairs if you get hungry. Help yourself to anything." "I can't pay you," she said abruptly. "I have not asked you to." "Then what do you want?" It was a fair question. Kazimir met her eyes. "Right now? I want you to sleep somewhere warm and dry, and I want to stop worrying about finding you hypothermic on my doorstep. Tomorrow, we can discuss the rest." She studied his face as if trying to read a code written there. Whatever she found must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. "Just tonight, if that's what you want." She stood there holding her bag, small and exhausted in his guest room, and Kazimir felt something shift in his chest. Protective instinct, perhaps. The urge to stand between fragile things and the dark. He had not felt it in decades, and it unsettled him. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then said, "Kiera. Kiera Foster." "Kazimir Iliev. Welcome to my home, Kiera Foster." He inclined his head slightly and left her there, pulling the door closed behind him. Downstairs he sat in his study and did not read the book he had opened. Instead, he listened to the careful sounds of her moving through the house, the shower running, the kitchen faucet, footsteps on old wood. Small sounds of a life taking shelter. Eventually they stopped, and he knew she had found sleep. He spent the night as he spent most nights, reading and working his way through correspondence that could not be traced to his real identity. The exile's life was one of constant vigilance, false names and careful movements. He had been Kazimir Iliev for 3 years now, a reclusive art dealer with old money and odd hours. Before that, he had been other names in other cities, always moving, always hidden, while the usurper Dragan ruled the Nightborn realm with an iron fist and hunted for the king he had overthrown. Kazimir had been 23 when he was turned, 400 years ago in a Europe that no longer existed. He had been a king for 2 centuries before Dragan's betrayal, and he had spent the last 50 years in exile learning to be no one. It grated against everything he was, but the alternative was death. Dragan held the Midnight Court, controlled the old families, and had declared Kazimir's existence forfeit. So Kazimir hid in the human world and waited for an opening that never came. He had not expected to complicate his careful isolation by inviting a homeless girl inside. When dawn approached, he left a note on the kitchen counter, "Work downstairs, will be unavailable during the day. Make yourself at home," and retreated to his basement sanctuary. The windowless room had been the deciding factor when he purchased the townhouse. He locked the reinforced door from the inside and let the sun rise without him. He woke to the smell of cooking. For a moment he lay disoriented in the dark, trying to remember the last time his home had smelled like food being prepared. Then memory returned, and he rose quickly, dressing in the clothes he kept down there. Upstairs the kitchen was warm and bright with electric light, and Kiera stood at his stove scrambling eggs. She turned when she heard him, looking guilty. "I'm sorry. I know you said help myself, but I didn't think about it feeling like I was taking over your kitchen." "It's fine," Kazimir said. The kitchen had not been used for anything but tea and the occasional meal for appearances in the 3 years he had lived here. Seeing it come to life was strange and not unpleasant. "I'm glad you found what you needed. There's enough for 2 if you want some," she offered, then bit her lip. "Or do you not eat eggs?" "I should have asked about dietary restrictions. That was rude. I ate earlier." The lie came easily. He had fed last night, a careful arrangement with a private blood bank that asked no questions if the money was good. "But thank you." She nodded and plated the eggs, sitting at the small table tucked against the window. Kazimir made himself tea and sat across from her, watching her eat. She was trying not to look too hungry, he noticed, keeping her bites measured and careful, but her plate emptied quickly. "What's your shift?" he asked. "Waitressing. 6 to 2 at a cafe in Camden. The night shift pays better." She said it matter-of-factly, no self-pity. I'm saving for first and last month's rent on a flat, but it takes time. How long have you been homeless? 3 weeks. I had a flat share, but the leaseholder decided to move his girlfriend in instead. Gave me 2 days' notice. She shrugged. It happens. That's illegal. So is a lot of things. Doesn't mean you can fight it when you don't have the money for a lawyer. She met his eyes. I'm not looking for someone to save me. I just needed somewhere safe to sleep for a few hours. I'll be out of your way after breakfast. You could stay. The word surprised him as much as her. Kiera stared at him. What? Stay. Until you have enough saved for a flat. The room is empty. I'm not using it. Kazimir kept his voice level, practical. You clearly need somewhere safe, and I have space. It's a simple arrangement. Nothing is simple, Kiera said slowly. What do you want in return? Nothing. Everyone wants something. Then consider it advance payment for returning my coat undamaged. He sipped his tea. I live alone, I work odd hours, and I value my privacy. You seem to value yours as well. We can coexist peacefully in the same building, I think, without complicating each other's lives. You don't know me. You don't know me either, but you slept under my window twice, which suggests you made some assessment of safety. Was it wrong? Kiera looked at him for a long moment. He kept his expression open, unthreatening. Finally she said, No, it wasn't wrong. You have kind eyes. Kind eyes. If she knew what he was, what he had done, she would not think his eyes kind. But Kazimir only nodded. Then stay. We can discuss details as needed. If it doesn't work, you leave. No hard feelings. Just like that. Just like that. She turned to look out the window at the small garden, thinking. Kazimir waited. He knew the shape of desperation, and he knew she would accept. Not because she trusted him, she was too smart for that, but because the alternative was sleeping rough in November and hope she survived until she could afford 4 walls. Okay, Kiera said finally, but I pay my way. I can cook, clean, whatever you need. I'm not a freeloader. Agreed. Though I warn you, I'm a boring housemate. I keep strange hours, I don't entertain, and I'm often working. Strange hours works for me. I'm usually dead asleep until 4 in the afternoon anyway. She stood, collecting her plate. What kind of work do you do? Art acquisition and sales. Mostly private clients, estate liquidations, that sort of thing. Another lie, smooth and practiced. It requires a lot of research and correspondence. Not very exciting. Hence the library downstairs. She washed her dish, dried it, put it away with the careful movements of someone used to cleaning up after herself. I should get ready for my shift. Kazimir watched her go upstairs, heard the shower start again. He sat in his kitchen that smelled like eggs and tried to understand what he was doing. He had spent 50 years being invisible, and now he had invited a human stranger into his home. It was foolish, dangerous, a complication he could not afford. But when Kiera came downstairs dressed for work, her dark hair pulled back and her face freshly scrubbed, she paused at the door and said, Thank you, Kazimir. Really, you didn't have to do this. I know, he said. She smiled, brief and genuine, and left. Kazimir sat in the sudden silence of his house and admitted to himself that he had just made a terrible decision. He also admitted that he did not regret it. The days fell into a rhythm. Kiera worked nights and slept days, which suited him perfectly. She left for her shift at 5:30 and returned around 3 in the morning, moving quietly through the house, never waking him. He rose at sunset and sometimes found evidence of her presence: a mug in the sink, a book moved from the shelf, the faint scent of her shampoo lingering in the bathroom. She kept her word about contributing, taking over the cooking and cleaning with unobtrusive efficiency. The house felt lived in for the first time in years. They saw each other in the evenings before her shift and late at night when she returned. She would eat dinner while he drank tea, and they talked about careful things. She told him about difficult customers and the cook who didn't speak English but made the best chips she had ever tasted. He told her edited stories about the art world, the eccentricities of wealthy collectors, the satisfaction of reuniting someone with a piece they had been searching for. They did not talk about anything real, and it worked. Until the night 2 weeks later when Kazimir came upstairs at sunset and found Kiera in his library, standing frozen in front of a particular painting. It was a portrait in oils, 400 years old, showing a young man in the clothes of minor nobility. Dark hair, pale skin, eyes the color of winter ice. The plaque beneath it read, "Unknown artist, circa 1623. Kazimir stopped in the doorway. Kiera turned slowly to look at him, then back at the painting. "That's you," she said. There was no point in denying it. The resemblance was exact because it was exact. He had commissioned the portrait himself the year before he was turned, a vanity of youth. He should have sold it or hidden it away. Instead, he had kept it, a reminder of the life he had lost. "Yes," Kazimir said quietly. 400 years ago. "Yes." Kiera stared at the painting. Her hands were shaking slightly. "What are you?" "I think you know. I want to hear you say it." Kazimir stepped into the library, moving slowly, keeping his hands visible. "I'm a vampire, Nightborn, in the parlance of my kind. I was turned in 1624 by a woman whose name I no longer remember. I ruled the Nightborn realm for 2 centuries before I was overthrown and exiled. I have been in hiding in the human world for 50 years. He paused. "And I am not going to hurt you. You've been drinking my blood." "No," he said it firmly. "I have never touched you, Kiera. I feed from a blood bank, paid arrangements, all consensual. You have been safe here, I swear it." She turned to face him fully. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have stayed if I had?" "No." "Then that's why." Kazimir leaned against the doorframe, suddenly tired. "I know how this looks, but I meant what I said that first night. I wanted you safe and warm, nothing more." "Nothing more," Kiera repeated. She laughed, a little wildly. "You're a vampire king in exile. I'm sleeping in a vampire king's guest room. That's not nothing more. That's insane. I prefer to think of it as unconventional." She stared at him, then laughed again, more genuinely this time. "You're unbelievable. Do you know that? Completely unbelievable." She sank into one of the leather chairs, running her hands through her hair. "I should leave. This is way beyond what I signed up for." "You should," Kazimir agreed. "It would be the smart thing. But you don't want me to." "No, I don't." He met her eyes. "I've been alone for a long time, Kiera. It's been nice having someone else in the house. Someone who sees me as Kazimir, the reclusive art dealer, not as the exiled king or the monster in hiding. You treated me like a person. I had forgotten what that felt like." Kiera was quiet for a long moment. "The sun," she said finally. "You're never around during the day. It would kill me. Rather quickly, from what I understand. I've never been brave enough to test it personally. And blood. You need blood to survive." "Yes, though I can go longer between feedings than the stories suggest. Once a week is sufficient if the source is good quality." "Can you do the mind control thing? Make people forget?" "Some Nightborn can. I never developed the talent. I have enhanced strength and speed, better senses, the usual package, but mind manipulation requires a gift I don't possess." "Do you kill people?" "Not anymore. Not in a very long time." He said it quietly. "I was not always the person I am now, Kiera. I have centuries of mistakes behind me, but I have tried in my own way to be better." She absorbed this, thinking. "Why were you overthrown?" "Because I trusted the wrong person. Dragan was my second, my closest advisor. I thought him a friend. He convinced the old families that I was leading the realm to destruction, that my policies of coexistence with humanity were weakness. He staged a coup, executed my supporters, and declared himself the new sovereign. I barely escaped with my life. And you've been running ever since." "Surviving," Kazimir corrected. "There's a difference." Kiera looked at him, really looked at him, and he wondered what she saw. A monster, probably. Something wearing the shape of a man. He waited for her to stand up, grab her bag, walk out into the night and out of his life. Instead, she said, "I'm going to be late for work. We should continue this conversation later." Kazimir blinked. "You're still going to work. I need the money, and I need time to think." She stood, collected her jacket from where she had draped it over the chair. "Will you still be here when I get back? Where would I go? I don't know. Vampire things, lurking dramatically in shadows, turning into a bat." She said it deadpan, and he realized she was teasing him. "I don't turn into a bat. That's deeply offensive stereotyping." "Noted." She paused at the door. "For the record, I don't think you're a monster. I think you're lonely. There's a difference." She left. Kazimir stood in his library next to the painting that had given him away and felt something warm unfold in his chest. She had not run. She knew what he was, and she had not run. He did not let himself examine too closely why that mattered so much. When Kiera returned at 3 in the morning, she found him in the kitchen making tea. She dropped into the chair across from him, looking exhausted. "Long night?" he asked. "Thursday nights are always chaos. Everyone thinks they need one more drink before the weekend starts." She accepted the cup he poured for her. "I've been thinking." "I gathered. You said you're in hiding, from this dragon person." "Yes." "Does he know where you are?" "No. I've been careful. New identity every few years, never staying in one place too long, no contact with anyone from my old life." Kazimir wrapped his hands around his own cup. "This house is the longest I've stayed anywhere since the exile began. 3 years. I should have moved on already, but I've been reluctant." "Why?" He looked around the kitchen, the shelves he had stocked, the art he had chosen, the space he had made his own. "Because I'm tired of running. Because this place feels like home, and I have not had a home in 50 years. Because I'm 400 years old and I'm exhausted." Kiera nodded slowly. "Okay, so what's your plan?" "My plan? For getting your realm back. For stopping Dragan. You can't hide forever." "I'm not sure I have a plan anymore," Kazimir admitted. "At first I thought I could gather supporters, stage a counter-coup. But Dragan has had 50 years to consolidate power. Anyone who might have helped me is dead or silenced. The old families have accepted his rule. There's no path back." "That's the most defeatist thing I've ever heard," Kiera said flatly. "You're a king. Start acting like one." He looked at her, startled. "You know nothing about Nightborn politics." "No, but I know about regular politics. And hiding in a townhouse feeling sorry for yourself isn't a strategy. It's giving up." She leaned forward. "You said Dragan convinced everyone you were weak, so prove him wrong. Remind them who you are. It's not that simple. It never is, but you have to start somewhere." She drained her tea and stood. "I'm going to bed. But think about it. You helped me when I had nowhere to go. Maybe I can help you." She left him sitting in the kitchen, her words echoing in his head. Kazimir stared into his cup and felt the first stirring of something he had not felt in decades. Not hope, exactly, but possibility. The next evening, he found Kiera in the library again, this time looking at different paintings. She glanced up when he entered. "Tell me about the Nightborn realm." So he did. He told her about the Midnight Court, the vast palace built in the spaces between the human world and something older. He described the old families, the political intricacies, the laws that had governed his kind for millennia. He explained the gates, the hidden ways that connected the human world to his own, how they could only be opened by those with Nightborn blood. He told her about the beauty of his realm, the impossibility of it, the way time moved differently there. Kiera listened, asking sharp questions, and Kazimir found himself talking more than he had in years. She had a way of pulling information from him, of making him remember things he had tried to forget. "So this dragon," she said finally, "he can't have just erased you from memory. You ruled for 200 years. People must remember. They remember, but memory fades and fear is a powerful motivator. Dragon has enforcers. The old families have sworn loyalty, and anyone who speaks my name in anything but curses risks execution. But he's still looking for you." "Yes. Which means he's afraid of you." Kiera leaned back, thinking. He's afraid that if you show up, if you remind people what you were, they might turn on him. He needs you to stay hidden. That's a generous interpretation. It's the only interpretation that makes sense. If you were truly irrelevant, he would have stopped hunting you decades ago. She looked at him. You need to make him come to you. That's suicide. Not if we're smart about it. We, Kazimir repeated. Yes, we. You let me stay here. You've been nothing but kind, and you need help whether you want to admit it or not. She crossed her arms. Besides, I'm invested now. I want to see how this ends. Kiera, this isn't a story. If Dragan finds me, he will kill me, and anyone associated with me. Then we make sure he doesn't win. She said it with such confidence that Kazimir almost believed her. Over the following weeks, they planned. Kiera had a mind for strategy that surprised him, seeing angles he had missed. She pointed out that his greatest advantage was the human world. Dragan and his court were creatures of the old ways, uncomfortable in modern cities, disdainful of human technology. Kazimir had spent 50 years learning to navigate both worlds. He knew how buses ran and how cameras worked, how to move through crowds and disappear into the urban landscape. Dragan's agents would be hunting for a Nightborn using old methods. They would not expect a king who had adapted. You need to draw them out, Kiera said one night. They were in the library, papers spread across the desk, planning like generals before a battle. Make them come to you on your terms, on your ground. How? She tapped the papers thoughtfully. You said there are gates, hidden entrances to your realm. Where's the nearest one? Beneath Westminster, an old entrance forgotten by most but still functional. Can Dragan's people access it? If they knew where to look. Kazimir saw where she was going. You want me to open the gate, to announce my presence. Exactly. Open the gate, leave a message, make it clear that you're here and you're not hiding anymore. Force his hand. He'll send everything he has. Good, because you'll be ready. She looked at him steadily. You've been reacting for 50 years. It's time to act first. Kazimir studied the young woman across from him, this homeless waitress who had stumbled into his life and was now plotting to help him reclaim a kingdom she had never seen. It was insane, impossible. And yet he found himself nodding. All right, he said. We do it your way. The smile she gave him was bright and fierce, and Kazimir realized with a start that somewhere in the past few weeks, something had shifted between them. She was no longer just the girl sleeping in his guest room. She was his partner, his confidant, his friend, and perhaps something more, though he did not let himself examine that thought too closely. They spent another week preparing. Kazimir contacted the few sources he still had in the Nightborn world, sent careful messages, gathered intelligence. Dragan had grown complacent, they learned, secure in his rule, dismissive of any threat. His agents still hunted for Kazimir, but the search had grown perfunctory. They no longer expected to find him. That was the opening they needed. On a Tuesday night in early December, Kazimir and Kiera took the tube to Westminster. She was nervous, he could tell, though she hid it well. You don't have to come, he said quietly, as they walked through the late evening crowds. Yes, I do. She had dressed in dark clothes, practical boots, her hair pulled back. We're doing this together. The entrance to the gate was in the crypt of an old church, access granted through a door that appeared only to Nightborn eyes. Kazimir led her down stone steps that smelled of age and damp into tunnels that ran beneath the city. Here the walls changed, the stone taking on an older quality, carved with symbols that predated London by centuries. This is it, he said, stopping before a wall that looked like solid rock. He placed his palm against it and felt the gate recognize him, felt his blood call to the ancient wards. The stone shimmered and dissolved, revealing a passage that led into darkness. You're not going through, Kiera said quickly. No, just opening it, leaving a message. From his pocket, Kazimir withdrew a small dagger, one of the few possessions he had taken from his palace before fleeing. The hilt was marked with his seal, the emblem of his house. He placed it on the ground just inside the gate, visible to anyone who passed through. Then he cut his palm, let 3 drops of blood fall onto the stone. "By blood I claim this gate," he said in the old language. "By right I announce my presence. The true king stands in exile no more." The words echoed in the tunnel, carrying power. The gate pulsed once, accepting the declaration, then stabilized. Kazimir pulled his hand back, and the stone reformed, sealing the passage. But the message was sent. Anyone who came through that gate from the Nightborn side would find his dagger, his blood, his challenge. "How long before they find it?" Kiera asked. "Hours. A day at most. Dragon keeps guards on all the major gates." He wrapped his bleeding palm in a handkerchief. "Now we go home and wait." They returned to the townhouse in tense silence. Kiera made tea while Kazimir paced the kitchen, restless. "What if this doesn't work?" she asked. "It will work. The question is what form their response will take. And you're ready?" He looked at her, this human girl who had somehow become essential to him. "I'm ready." They did not have to wait long. The next evening, as Kazimir rose and came upstairs, he smelled it immediately. Nightborn, in his house. He moved silently to the living room and found a woman standing by the window. She was tall and pale, with white hair cascading down her back, dressed in black that seemed to drink the light. When she turned, her eyes were crimson. "Kazimir," she said, and her voice held the weight of centuries. "You've been foolish." He recognized her. Morgana, one of Dragon's inner circle. "I've been deliberate," he corrected. "There's a difference. Opening the Westminster gate, leaving your seal like a calling card. You might as well have sent him an engraved invitation." She moved toward him, graceful and predatory. "Dragon is not pleased." "I don't care about Dragon's pleasure. You should. He wants you dead, Kazimir, and he sent me to collect your head." "Then you have a problem," Kiera said from the doorway. Morgana turned, seeing her for the first time, her lip curled. A human pet. How quaint. Not a pet. A friend. Kazimir positioned himself between them. "And you're not going to touch her." "She's nothing. Mortal. Fragile. She's under my protection. That makes her everything." He let his voice drop to the register he had used when passing judgment as king, cold and absolute. "You came to my home, Morgana. My territory. That was your first mistake. You have no territory. You have a rental and delusions. I have this city. I've walked its streets for 3 years, learned its rhythms, made it mine in ways you never could. You're a stranger here. I'm not." Morgana laughed. "You think that matters? You're one Nightborn, Kazimir. Dragon sent 6 of us. We have the house surrounded." "I know," Kiera said calmly. "I counted 4 outside. 1 front, 1 back, 2 on the rooftops across the street. You, that makes 5. Where's the 6th? Morgana's expression flickered. "Clever human." "The 6th is coming through the basement," Kazimir said. He had heard the subtle scrape of the window being forced. "Which was expected." He moved fast, crossing the room to the desk and pulling out a small remote. "I've had 50 years to prepare for being found, Morgana. Did you really think I wouldn't take precautions?" He pressed the button. Outside, car alarms began wailing. Lights flooded on, motion sensors triggered. The entire street erupted in noise and illumination. Through the window, Kazimir saw the Nightborn agents on the roof scrambling, suddenly visible, suddenly exposed. Curtains twitched in neighboring houses. Someone shouted. "You just called the humans down on us!" Morgana hissed. "Yes, and in about 3 minutes this street will be full of police responding to a burglary in progress. You can fight me, or you can run. Choose quickly." Morgana stared at him with undisguised fury. "This isn't over. It never was. Tell Dragon that I'm not hiding anymore. Tell him I'm coming for what's mine." She vanished, moving with inhuman speed toward the back of the house. Kazimir heard glass breaking, shouts, the sound of Nightborn retreat. Within 2 minutes, the street was empty, except for confused humans peering from windows. By the time the first police car arrived, Kazimir and Kiera were sitting in the living room looking appropriately startled, reporting a possible break-in attempt. The officers took statements, examined the forced basement window, and finally left with promises to increase patrols in the area. When they were gone, Kiera collapsed onto the sofa and started laughing. "Did that actually work?" she asked between gasps. It worked. They weren't expecting human intervention. Nightborn think they can move through the mortal world unseen, but they're arrogant about it. They forget that humans notice strange things. Kazimir sat beside her, feeling the adrenaline finally ebbing. "Thank you for the count. I wasn't certain how many he had sent. I've been waitressing in London for 3 years. You learn to count people without looking." She turned to face him. "So what now?" "Now they know I'm serious, and Dragon has to make a choice: send more agents and risk more exposure, or face me himself." "You think he'll come?" "Eventually, but not yet. He'll try other approaches first." Kazimir ran a hand through his hair, feeling tired. "We bought some time. Not much, but some." Kiera was quiet for a moment, then said, "Morgana called me your pet. You're not, you know that. She said I was under your protection. You are. If that bothers you, it doesn't." She met his eyes. "Kazimir, what are we doing here?" "Surviving, planning, preparing to take back my realm." "That's not what I mean." Her voice was soft. "What are we doing? You and me?" Kazimir looked at her, this human woman who had stumbled into his life and changed everything. She was watching him with those brown eyes, open and patient, and he realized he had been avoiding this conversation for weeks. "I don't know," he admitted. "I told myself you were a responsibility, someone who needed help, but that's not true anymore, is it?" "No. You've become important to me. More important than is wise, given what I am and what's coming." He searched for the right words. "I am not human, Kiera. I stopped being human 400 years ago. I don't age, I don't die easily. I drink blood to survive. Caring for someone like me is complicated." "I know what you are," Kiera said. "I've known for weeks now, and I'm still here." "Why?" She considered the question. "Because beneath all the Vampire King stuff, you're kind. You gave me shelter when I had nowhere to go. You never asked for anything in return. You treated me like a person worth respecting." She paused. "And because when you talk about your realm, your people, your home, your eyes go sad. I want to help you get that back. That's not a reason to stay. No. The reason I stay is because I like you. Human or Nightborn, king or exile. I like who you are." She reached out, tentative, and touched his hand. "Is that okay?" Kazimir looked down at her fingers on his, warm and alive. "I haven't let myself feel anything for someone in a very long time," he said quietly. "It's dangerous. Everyone I've cared about became a target. I'm already a target. Morgana saw me. They know about me now. Which is exactly why I should send you away. Somewhere safe, somewhere far from all this. You could try." Kiera squeezed his hand. "But I'd just come back. I'm stubborn that way." Despite everything, Kazimir smiled. "I've noticed." They sat there in the quiet house, hands linked, and Kazimir felt the careful walls he had built around himself begin to crack. It terrified him. It also felt inevitable, like watching sunrise and knowing you could not stop the day. "I don't know where this goes," he said finally. "I don't know what I can offer you besides danger and complications." "How about we figure it out as we go?" Kiera suggested. "No promises, no expectations. Just see what happens." That's very casual for someone who lives with a vampire king. Exiled vampire king. Let's be accurate. He laughed, surprising himself. Fair point. They stayed there until Kiera had to leave for work, reluctant to break the moment. When she finally pulled away and stood, Kazimir caught her hand again. "Be careful tonight," he said. "Always am." I mean it. They know about you now. Stay in public places. Stay visible. Kazimir, I work in a cafe full of people until 3 in the morning. I'm fine. But she looked touched by his concern. I'll text when I get there and when I leave. Thank you. She left, and Kazimir spent the evening in a state of restless vigilance. Every sound made him tense, every shadow suspect. When his phone buzzed with her text, made it safe. The cook says hi. He noticed you're feeding me better food. He felt some of the tension ease. The days that followed were strange. No more attacks came, but Kazimir felt the weight of eyes on him whenever he left the house. Dragan's agents watching, waiting, reporting back. Let them, he thought. Let them see that he was no longer hiding. He began reaching out more actively to old contacts. Carefully, through layers of intermediaries, he sent messages to members of the old families who might remember him favorably. The responses were mixed. Some ignored him entirely. Some sent back warnings to stay hidden. But a precious few sent words of support. We remember the true king, one message read. We wait. It was enough to build on. Slowly, carefully, Kazimir began to assemble the pieces of a real plan. Kiera helped in ways she did not fully understand, but that proved invaluable. She knew the human city in ways he never could: the buses, the tube lines, the back alleys and shortcuts. She helped him set up dead drops for messages, taught him about burner phones and anonymous email accounts, modern espionage through mortal eyes. You're a natural at this, he told her one night. I spent 3 weeks homeless. You learned to move through a city without being noticed. She was sprawled on the sofa, laptop balanced on her knees, researching something arcane about Nightborn history. Besides, it turns out overthrowing usurpers is more interesting than waitressing. You're still going to work. I need the money and the normalcy. If I spend all my time plotting vampire coups, I'll lose my mind. Fair enough. Kazimir watched her work and felt that dangerous warmth in his chest again. She had cut her hair recently, shorter and more practical, and it made her look older. Or perhaps she was simply growing into herself, gaining confidence, living without fear for the first time in months. What? She asked, catching him staring. Nothing, just thinking. About? About how strange this is, how unexpected. He leaned against the doorframe. 6 weeks ago, you were sleeping on my doorstep. Now you're helping me plan a coup. Life's funny that way. She closed the laptop. Can I ask you something? Always. When you get your realm back, assuming we pull this off, what happens then? It was the question Kazimir had been avoiding. I don't know. I suppose I rule again. Try to undo the damage Dragan has caused, rebuild. And where does that leave me? He crossed to sit beside her. Where do you want it to leave you? I don't know either. I'm human, you're Nightborn. I'm going to age and die, you're not. That's not exactly a recipe for happily ever after. No, he agreed quietly. It's not. Kiera looked at him. But we keep doing this anyway. It seems so. She laughed softly. We're idiots. Probably. She leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture that had become familiar over the past weeks. Kazimir put his arm around her, careful and gentle, and let himself have this moment of peace. Whatever came next, war, death, triumph, loss. Right now they had this. It would have to be enough. The attack came on a Sunday night in mid-December. Kiera was at work. Kazimir was in his study, and he heard the front door shatter inward. This time there was no subtlety, no quiet infiltration. This was a statement. He was on his feet and moving before the first agent crossed the threshold. 4 of them, all Nightborn, all armed with silver blades. They spread through his house like poison, fast and lethal. Kazimir met the first one in the hallway, and they collided with inhuman force. The agent was strong, well-trained, but Kazimir had centuries of experience. He disarmed the man in 3 moves and threw him through the living room wall. The second came at him from the kitchen. Kazimir ducked a blade meant for his throat and slammed his opponent into the counter hard enough to crack stone. The third and fourth attacked together, coordinated, and he had to retreat up the stairs. They were pushing him toward the upper floors, toward the rooms with windows, toward daylight exposure if they could hold him until dawn. Smart. Kazimir fought hard, trading blows, using every trick 400 years had taught him, but they were young and fast and fresh, and he was 1 against 4. He felt a blade slice across his ribs, another scrape his arm. Not fatal, not yet, but he was losing. Then the front door opened and Kiera's voice rang out. "Police are on their way. I called from the corner." It was a bluff. She was supposed to be at work, but it worked. The agents hesitated, their attention split. In that moment, Kazimir moved. He grabbed the nearest agent and used him as a shield, driving them both into the other two. They went down in a tangle of limbs, and Kazimir was on them, fast and vicious. He fought like the king he was, like the warrior he had been before politics, and within seconds, 2 of the agents were unconscious. The other 2 fled, crashing through the back door. Kazimir stood in his destroyed hallway, breathing hard, bleeding. Kiera ran to him. "I came home for my phone, I forgot it, and I saw them breaking in." "You should have stayed away and let them kill you." "Not happening." She was shaking, looking at the blood on his clothes, the unconscious Nightborn on the floor. "Are you okay?" "I'll heal. We need to leave. They'll be back with reinforcements." "Where do we go?" "Good question." Kazimir's mind raced. The townhouse was compromised, his safe haven gone. They needed somewhere Dragon's agents would not think to look. Somewhere outside the usual patterns. "I have a place," he said slowly. "An old safe house I haven't used in decades. It's not much, but it's off the grid." He looked at her. "Pack quickly. Only essentials." They moved fast, throwing clothes and necessities into bags. Kazimir took his important documents, the few weapons he kept hidden, and on impulse the old portrait from the library. They were gone within 10 minutes, slipping out the back door and into the London night. The safe house was a flat above a chip shop in East London, paid for under a name that no longer existed. It was small and dated, but clean. More importantly, it had never appeared in any of his recent identities. No one would connect it to Kazimir Iliev, reclusive art dealer. Kiera looked around the cramped space and laughed tiredly. "From townhouse to bedsit, we're going up in the world." "It's temporary." Kazimir locked the door, set the wards he could manage without drawing attention. "Just until we figure out the next move." "Which is?" He sank onto the narrow sofa, suddenly exhausted. The wounds were healing already, but they still hurt. "I don't know. They're escalating. Dragon is getting desperate. Or confident." Kiera sat beside him. "Maybe he thinks he has you cornered." "He does have me cornered." "Then we change the game." She was thinking. He could see the wheels turning. "You said you've been getting support from some of the old families. How many?" "Maybe a dozen houses. Not enough to challenge Dragon directly. But enough to cause chaos if they moved at once." "Possibly. What are you thinking?" Kiera leaned forward. "We've been playing defense, reacting to Dragon's moves, but what if we force him to react to us?" "I tried that. It got my house destroyed. No, I mean really force his hand. You're a king, right? So act like one. Call a gathering. Invoke some old law or tradition he can't ignore. Make him come to you on your terms in front of witnesses." Kazimir stared at her. "The right of challenge," he said slowly. "What's that?" "An ancient law. Any king can be challenged for the throne, but the challenge must be answered publicly before the assembled families. If I invoke it, Dragon has to face me in the midnight court, or forfeit his claim to legitimacy." "Perfect. So do that." "It's not that simple. The challenge has to be delivered formally, in the old way. And Dragon can set the terms: time, place, conditions. He'll stack everything in his favor. Let him, as long as you get your chance to face him." Kiera gripped his hand. "Kazimir, you've been running for 50 years. Eventually you have to stand and fight. Might as well be now, while you have people willing to support you." He looked at their joined hands, then at her face. Fierce and determined, this human woman who had somehow become his partner, his strategist, his anchor. "You know this will probably get us both killed." "Probably, but at least we'll go down swinging." Despite everything, he smiled. "You're insane." "I prefer optimistic." She squeezed his hand. So, are we doing this? Kazimir thought about 50 years of exile. Thought about his realm under Dragon's rule, his people suffering. Thought about this woman beside him who believed he could win. And he thought about the alternative, running forever, hiding, letting fear dictate his existence. Yes, he said. We're doing this. The next days were a blur of preparation. Kazimir reached out to his supporters, explained the plan, and asked them to bear witness when the time came. The responses were cautious but affirmative. They would attend. They would watch. If he could actually challenge Dragon and make it stick, they would support him. The challenge itself had to be delivered correctly, following protocols that dated back millennia. Kazimir spent a day writing the formal declaration, choosing each word with care. When it was done, he sealed it with his blood and his seal, marking it as legitimate. Getting it to Dragon was the tricky part. He could not deliver it personally, that would be suicide. But it had to be presented by someone of standing, someone the Midnight Court would recognize. The solution came from an unexpected source. One of his supporters, a Nightborn named Lucian, who had served in his court centuries ago, volunteered to act as herald. "I'm old enough to invoke tradition," Lucian explained during their carefully arranged meeting in a parking garage at midnight. "And Dragon can't kill a herald without violating the oldest laws. He's careful about that sort of thing. Bad for his image." "You're putting yourself at risk," Kazimir said. "You were a good king. Better than he is." Lucian took the sealed challenge. "I'll deliver this tomorrow night before the assembled families. Dragon will have to accept or lose face." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Win the challenge first. Then we'll celebrate." Lucian disappeared into the night, taking Kazimir's challenge with him. Kiera, who had been watching from the car, emerged. "Now what?" "Now we wait for Dragon's response." It came 3 days later. Lucian appeared at the safe house flat, looking exhausted but triumphant. He accepted. "The challenge is set for the new moon, 3 weeks from now. Location, the Midnight Court. Conditions, single combat, no weapons, no interference. First blood or submission determines the victor." Kazimir absorbed this. First blood, not death. He's being cautious. Killing you outright would make you a martyr. But humiliating you in front of the families, proving you're too weak to rule, that solidifies his power. Lucian paused. Of course, there's nothing stopping him from killing you after he draws first blood. The law is satisfied at that point. Noted. "Can you beat him?" Kiera asked bluntly. "I don't know. Dragon was always a skilled fighter, and he's had 50 years to practice while I've been in hiding." "Then you train," she said firmly. 3 weeks. We make you ready." "We?" "Yes, we. I'm coming with you." Kazimir turned to her. "Absolutely not. The Midnight Court is no place for a human. I don't care. You're not doing this alone. Kiera, they'll kill you. They'll try. But I'm betting old Nightborn law has something to say about guests and safe conduct, and you're going to invoke every bit of it." She crossed her arms. "I'm not negotiating this, Kazimir. I'm going." He looked at Lucian helplessly. The older Nightborn shrugged. "She has a point about guest rights, and technically as your companion, advisor, she has standing to attend. See? I have standing." Kiera said it smugly. Kazimir wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, but he also knew that look on her face, and he knew he had already lost. "Fine. But you stay behind the wards, you don't interfere, and you do exactly as I say." Deal. The 3 weeks passed in a strange haze of preparation. Kazimir trained every night, running through combat forms he had not used in decades, pushing his body to remember what it meant to fight for survival. Kiera helped however she could, timing his movements, pointing out patterns, being the voice of strategy when he got too caught up in the physical aspects. They also talked about what came after. If he won, if he somehow managed to reclaim his throne, what did that mean for them? The question hung between them, unanswered. Kazimir did not know what to offer her. Humans did not fare well in the Nightborn realm. The time distortion alone could be dangerous. Years could pass there while days passed in the mortal world, or vice versa. Bringing her into his world meant risking everything she knew. We'll figure it out, Kiera kept saying. First you win, then we deal with the logistics. You make it sound simple. It is simple, complicated, but simple. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor of the flat, watching him run through blade forms with a wooden practice sword Lucian had provided. You love your realm. You want it back. I want to be with you. Therefore, we find a way to make both things work. You want to be with me. He stopped mid-form, looking at her. Yeah, I thought that was obvious. You've never said it explicitly. Neither have you. She stood, walked over to him. Kazimir, I know what I'm signing up for. Centuries-old vampire king, immortal, drinks blood, comes with political intrigue and assassination attempts. I'm good with all of that. The question is whether you're good with me. He set down the practice sword carefully. I've been trying not to be. Trying to keep distance, keep perspective, because caring about you makes everything harder and more dangerous. And yet I care anyway. He touched her face gently. You came into my life like a storm, Kiera Foster. You've challenged every assumption I made about exile and solitude. You made me remember what it's like to have someone to fight for. Is that romantic vampire speak for I love you? She asked, but her voice was soft. I'm not sure I remember how to love someone. It's been a very long time, but what I feel for you is as close as I know how to get. She kissed him. It was sudden and warm and human, and Kazimir felt something in him finally break open. He pulled her closer, careful of his strength, and kissed her back with 400 years of loneliness behind it. When they finally pulled apart, Kiera was smiling. Okay, so we're doing this, the actual relationship thing. Apparently. Good. Now get back to training. I want you alive to make good on all the romantic potential here. He laughed and returned to his forms, but something had shifted, settled into place. Whatever happened in 3 weeks, win or lose, life or death, at least he would face it, knowing what he was fighting for. The night of the new moon came cold and clear. Kazimir dressed in black, formal clothes that echoed his old station without claiming it outright. Kiera wore a dark dress Lucian had provided, simple and elegant. You look like you belong in a vampire court, Kazimir told her. I'll take that as a compliment. She was nervous, he could tell, but hiding it well. Ready? No, but we're going anyway. Lucian met them at the Westminster Gate. The passage was open, guarded by Nightborn in formal livery. They looked at Kazimir with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility, but none moved to stop him. Guest rights, apparently, were in effect. Stay close, Kazimir murmured to Kiera as they stepped through the gate. The passage was disorienting, reality bending in ways human senses were not meant to process. Kiera gripped his hand tightly, and Kazimir anchored her through the transition. Then they emerged into the midnight court, and he heard her gasp. The palace was vast, built from stone that seemed to hold darkness like water holds light. The architecture defied normal geometry, towers that reached toward a sky that held 3 moons, bridges that connected nothing to nowhere, windows that looked out on vistas that should not exist. It was beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. This is your realm, Kiera whispered. Part of it. The court is the seat of power. The realm beyond is larger than you can imagine. Kazimir looked around at the palace he had not seen in 50 years and felt his heart clench. I missed this. I didn't let myself admit it, but I missed it terribly. Lucian led them through corridors filled with Nightborn, all dressed in formal attire, all staring at the returned king. Whispers followed in their wake. Some bowed as he passed, others glared. The old families were here in force, Kazimir realized. This would be witnessed by everyone who mattered. They entered the throne room, and Kazimir stopped. The space was cavernous, lit by chandeliers that burned with cold fire. At the far end, on a throne of black stone that he had once called his own, sat Dragan. He looked exactly as Kazimir remembered. White-haired and pale-skinned, handsome in the way of their kind, dressed in clothes that shouted wealth and power. When he stood, the room fell silent. Kazimir, Dragan said, and his voice carried easily across the space. You've come home. How touching. "I've come to take back what you stole," Kazimir replied evenly. "Stole? I saved the realm from your weakness, from your pathetic attempts to coexist with humans." Dragon's eyes flicked to Kiera. "I see you've brought a pet to watch. How appropriate. She's here as my guest, under the old laws. You will not touch her." "Of course not. I'm civilized." Dragon descended from the throne, walking toward the center of the room where a space had been cleared. "So, you invoked the right of challenge. I accepted. Let's finish this." Kazimir handed his coat to Kiera. She gripped it tightly, looking up at him. "Be smart, be fast, be alive when this is over." "I'll try." He kissed her quickly, aware of the shocked whispers that generated, then stepped into the circle. The rules were simple. No weapons, no outside interference. The fight continued until one of them drew blood or submitted. Kazimir rolled his shoulders, loosening up, and faced his opponent. Dragon attacked first, fast and brutal. They collided in the center of the circle with a sound like thunder. For a few seconds it was pure chaos, fists and feet, blocks and strikes, both of them moving with inhuman speed. The assembled Nightborn watched in silence. Kazimir blocked a strike meant for his throat, countered with a kick that Dragon barely avoided. They circled each other, looking for openings. Dragon was strong, his technique flawless. But Kazimir had fought for survival in ways Dragon, secure in his power, had not needed to in decades. He was hungry in a way Dragon was not. They clashed again. This time Kazimir managed to lock Dragon's arm, twist, and throw him. Dragon hit the stone floor and rolled, coming up gracefully. His eyes held new respect. "You've improved," Dragon acknowledged. "I've had time to practice." They engaged again, and this time it was closer, more careful. Both of them were testing, learning, adjusting. Kazimir felt the rhythm of it, the deadly dance. He had forgotten how much he loved this, the pure competition. Strength against strength, skill against skill. But then Dragon changed tactics. Instead of attacking Kazimir directly, he moved toward the edge of the circle, toward where Kiera stood behind the wards. Kazimir's heart stopped. "Don't." "Why not? She's just a human. Fragile." Dragon's hand lashed out, testing the ward. It held, but Kiera flinched back. "I wonder how long these protections last. An hour? 2? Rage flooded through Kazimir, white hot and absolute. Dragon was using her to throw him off balance, to make him reckless, and it was working. He lunged, fast and angry, and Dragon met him with a calculated strike. Pain exploded across Kazimir's face. Claws had extended, raking across his cheek. Blood welled, hot and red. First blood. Dragon had won. The room erupted in noise. Dragon stepped back, raising his hand in victory. "The challenge is satisfied. The throne remains mine." But Kazimir was still standing. Blood dripped from his face, but his eyes were clear. "No," he said. The room fell silent again. Dragon turned. "What?" "The challenge isn't over. I haven't submitted. First blood ends the formal challenge, but it doesn't end the fight." Kazimir wiped the blood from his face. "You want to kill me, Dragon? Then kill me, in front of everyone. Show them what kind of king you really are." It was a gamble. If Dragon struck now, while Kazimir was unprepared, he could end this. But doing so would reveal him as dishonorable, as someone who violated the spirit of the old laws for convenience. Dragon hesitated. In that hesitation, Kazimir saw his opening. He moved, not toward Dragon, but toward the throne. He crossed the space in seconds and stood before the black stone seat, placing his hand on it. The throne recognized him. He felt it sing in his blood, respond to his claim. "By right of blood and birthright, I reclaim this throne," Kazimir said, his voice ringing out. "By the old laws, by the covenant of the families, I challenge Dragon's legitimacy not through combat, but through the consent of the ruled. Who here will vouch for me?" Silence. Kazimir stood there, hand on the throne, blood on his face, and waited. This was the real gamble. If no one spoke, he had nothing. If even one voice supported him, it opened the door. Then Lucien stepped forward. "I vouch for Kazimir Iliev." true king of the Nightborn. Another voice from the gathered crowd. I vouch for him. Another. And I. And I. One by one, members of the old families stepped forward. Not all of them, many stayed silent, loyal to Dragan. But enough. More than enough. Dragan stared, fury and disbelief warring on his face. This is meaningless. I won the challenge. You drew first blood in a fight, an old Nightborn interrupted. She was ancient, one of the founding families, and her voice carried weight. But the boy is right. The throne belongs to the one the families accept, and I see support for both of you. This matter is not settled. Then how do we settle it? Dragan demanded. The old way, a vote of the assembled families. Let each house declare their allegiance. The throne goes to whoever holds the majority. It was unprecedented, and completely within the bounds of ancient law. Kazimir saw Dragan realize his mistake by accepting the challenge. By fighting in front of everyone, he had opened the door to this moment. Public opinion suddenly mattered. The vote was called. One by one, the heads of the old families declared their choice. It was close, terrifyingly close. Some houses supported Dragan, citing stability and tradition. Others supported Kazimir, remembering his rule, swayed by his courage in returning. When the last vote was counted, Kazimir had won by 3 houses, 3 out of nearly 40. The margin was razor thin. The ancient Nightborn who had called the vote nodded. The families have spoken. By ancient law, Kazimir Iliev is recognized as rightful king of the Nightborn. Chaos erupted. Dragan roared in fury, moving to attack, but the families moved between them. The law has spoken, the Ancient One said firmly. Dragan, you may choose exile or submission, but you will not harm the acknowledged king. For a moment, Kazimir thought Dragan would fight anyway, law or no law, but then the usurper looked around, saw the families united against him, and something in him broke. Exile, he spat. I choose exile. So witnessed. You have until sunrise to leave the realm. Dragan cast one last look of pure hatred at Kazimir, then stalked from the throne room. His supporters followed, a diminished group. The rest of the assembled Nightborn turned to Kazimir, and as one, they knelt. Kazimir stood there, hand still on the throne, and felt the weight of 400 years crash down on him. He had done it. Against all odds, all logic, he had reclaimed his throne. He was king again. He looked across the room and found Kiera still standing behind the wards, tears streaming down her face. She was smiling. The formalities took hours. Kazimir had to be formally crowned again, had to accept the oaths of the families, had to receive the symbols of office. Through it all, he felt like he was moving in a dream, the ceremony washing over him. Finally, as the 3 moons set and a 4th rose, he was allowed to step away. He found Kiera waiting in a side chamber, looking exhausted. You did it, she said. We did it. He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. You made this possible, Kiera. Your plan, your strategy. I couldn't have done this without you. So what now? She looked up at him. You're king again. You have a realm to run, centuries of politics to navigate. Where does that leave us? It was the question he had been avoiding. Kazimir took a breath. It leaves us with a choice. You can return to the human world. I'll make sure you're safe, set you up with whatever you need. Or you can stay. Stay how? I'm human. Your world is, she gestured vaguely, complicated for someone like me. There's a way, if you choose it. He hesitated. I could turn you, make you Nightborn. It's a risk. The transformation doesn't always take cleanly. But if it worked, you would be immortal. You could stay here, with me, without the time distortions affecting you. Kiera was very still. You're asking me to become a vampire. I'm offering it as an option, only if you want it. No pressure, no expectation. But yes, that's what I'm asking. She walked to the window, looking out over the impossible landscape of the Nightborn realm. Kazimir waited, his heart pounding despite himself. I'd have to drink blood, she said finally. Yes. Live forever, or close enough. Yes. Leave behind everything I knew as human. Yes. But I'd be with you. Yes. She turned to face him. Do it. Kiera, I'm sure. I've been sure since before we came here. I just didn't know if you'd offer. She crossed back to him. I don't want to go back to the human world and age while you stay here unchanged. I don't want to be separated by time and space and biology. I want to be with you, however that works. So yes, turn me. Kazimir searched her face. It's permanent. There's no going back. Good. I never liked going backward. She took his hand. I'm choosing this, Kazimir. I'm choosing you. So let's do this before I lose my nerve. The turning required ritual, preparation. Lucien helped, guiding them through the process with quiet efficiency. They moved to Kazimir's restored chambers, his rooms, unchanged since the day he fled. It felt surreal to be here again. Kiera sat on the edge of the massive bed, looking nervous now. What's it like? I don't remember much of my own turning, but from what I understand, it's painful. The venom has to remake your entire system. You'll sleep for days while the transformation completes. He sat beside her. Are you sure? Stop asking me that. Yes, I'm sure. He nodded. Then we begin. The ritual was simple in form, if not in execution. He would drain her nearly to death, then feed her his own blood. The exchange would start the transformation, the venom in his blood remaking her from the inside out. Kazimir bit into his own wrist first, letting his blood well. Then he looked at Kiera. Last chance. Bite me already. He almost laughed. Then he leaned in, letting his fangs extend, and bit carefully into her throat. Her blood was warm and sweet, tasting of life and humanity and everything he was about to take from her. He drank, feeling her life force dim, until she was on the edge. Then he stopped, bringing his bleeding wrist to her mouth. Drink, he commanded softly. She drank. The effect was immediate. She convulsed, gasping as the venom hit her system. Kazimir held her as the transformation began, as her body started the painful process of dying and being reborn. She screamed once, then fell silent, slipping into the deep sleep of changing. He laid her carefully on the bed, brushing hair from her face. Sleep well, Kiera Foster. Wake up new. For 3 days he barely left her side. Lucien brought him blood, handled the immediate concerns of ruling, ran interference with the families. Kazimir sat vigil, watching her transform. Her skin paled, her hair began to lighten at the roots, her features sharpened. The change was remaking her into something both familiar and new. On the 4th day, as the second moon rose, she opened her eyes. They were no longer brown. They were crimson, bright and clear and utterly inhuman. Kazimir? Her voice was different, stronger. I'm here. He took her hand, relief flooding through him. How do you feel? Strange. Everything is more, sharper. I can hear your heartbeat. I can smell the stone of the walls. She sat up suddenly. I'm not human anymore. No, you're Nightborn. You're one of us now. She looked down at her hands, pale and elegant, stronger than they had been. Then she looked at him and smiled. This is so weird. Give it time. You'll adjust. Over the next weeks, she did. Kiera threw herself into learning what she had become, mastering her new senses and strength with the same determination she had brought to helping him reclaim his throne. She was a natural, picking up the nuances of Nightborn existence with ease. The families accepted her, cautiously at first, then with growing respect. She was the human who had helped their king return. She was also, now, one of them. Kazimir formally presented her to the court as his consort, and no one objected. She had earned her place. 6 months after his restoration, Kazimir stood on a balcony overlooking his realm and felt something he had not felt in 50 years. Peace. Dragan was truly gone, exiled to some distant corner where he could cause no more trouble. The families were united, the realm stable. He had his throne back, his home back, his purpose back, and he had Kiera. She joined him on the balcony, moving with the grace all Nightborn possessed. Her hair was fully white now, cascading down her back, and in her formal gown she looked every inch the vampire queen. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About you sleeping under my window, about how one small act of kindness changed everything. You were kind to a homeless girl. Look where it got you." She leaned against him. Throne, realm, hot vampire girlfriend, not a bad return on investment. He laughed, pulling her close. "Best decision I ever made." "Mine too." She looked up at him, crimson eyes glowing. "So, Your Majesty, what's next?" "Next we rule, together, for as long as the world turns." "Sounds good to me." They stood there together, king and consort, watching over the realm that was theirs. Below them, the midnight court gleamed, eternal and beautiful. Above them, 3 moons crossed paths in an impossible sky. And between them was something that had started with shelter offered and trust given, grown through danger and revolution, and ended in a love that would outlast centuries. Kazimir had found her asleep beneath his window, a girl with nowhere else to go. Now she stood beside him as his equal, his partner, his love. They had survived exile and war, overcome impossible odds, and built something lasting from the rubble of desperation. He kissed her there on the balcony, with his realm spread beneath them and forever ahead. She kissed him back, fierce and joyful. And Kazimir thought that for the first time in 400 years, he understood what it meant to be truly home. Not because of the throne or the palace or the power, but because she was here, and that made everything else worth it. They pulled apart, smiling at each other, and turned to face whatever came next. Together, always together. The night welcomed them, and they welcomed it back. 2 immortals who had found something rare and precious, a love that would never die, built from trust and choice, and the simple act of offering shelter to someone in need. It was enough. It was everything, and as they walked back into their palace, hand in hand, the realm itself seemed to celebrate their joy. The exile had ended, the kingdom was restored, and the vampire king had found something more valuable than any throne. He had found her.